everybody, welcome back to the Dice Tower. My name is Z Garcia.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Camilla.
Today we are taking a look at a new game in the Everdell line of games. This is Farshore, and it is, as it says down here, in this line of Everdell Edge of the Map games, of which I'm guessing there will be more. It goes to the world of Everdell, it goes to a place that's unexplored yet, in this case a sort of coastal region, and gives us a game set in that universe, right? As far as the game goes, well, let's go ahead and take a look at the overview first, and we'll come on back and we'll tell you what we think of the inner workings of Farshore here. Here we're taking a look at the game set up for 2 players. We've got 8 cards in the bay. The players have an opening hand, and they begin with 2 of their workers, 2 of their characters, and 3 anchors. Everything else is set up as you see here, with the ships at the beginning of this line out here, and all of the resources laid out. So the players are going to be playing over 4 seasons. They begin in one season, and they will switch to the next season 3 times in the game, and that's what these locations up here represent. You'll be getting new characters and recalling the ones that you've placed out. And every player on their turn is going to do one of 3 things. You can either place a worker and take the action associated with that spot, you can play a card, or you can prepare for the next season. So I begin, like I said, with these 2 and a handful of cards. All the cards out here in the bay can also be played when you play a card. So these are basically available to all of the players around the table. So on my turn, my first action might be to deploy one of my workers to this location right here. And that location there can have a single character denoted by the 1 footprint, whereas this could have any number. And above it, it shows me what I gain. So I'll get 2 mushrooms. The resources in this game are mushrooms, we've got driftwood, we've got seaweed, and sea stones over here. So that would be it for my go, and then my opponent would go, and perhaps my opponent might go, say here, and gain 3 driftwood, as listed above that location. Besides that, we've also got these locations down here that we put out randomly at the beginning of the game, and there will be as many as there are players. So in a 2-player game, there's only 2 locations, and like I said, there's a stack of these, so they are random. This one here gives us 2 of anything, and this one of each of these 3. So 1 driftwood, 1 seaweed, and 1 mushroom, all right? It comes back to me, and on my turn, I'm going to play a card. So I'm going to deploy this card right here, Sea Chip, okay? And it costs me 2 mushrooms, that's denoted over on this side, and it is going to be worth 1 victory point. There are 3 copies of this card in the game, and then it has an ability. The type of card is listed right here, as well as letting me know that this is a common critter. And it says that I activate 1 location in my city when I play this out. Now, instead of playing this from my hand, I could play this one out here. It's the same card, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll put this out. I'm going to spend my 2 mushrooms to do so. And I'm going to activate the ability, which in this case is activating another location in my city. There aren't any others, so I am wasting that action. I have room in my deployment area here for 15 cards, all right? So that's the first one. We will replenish this location now, and if it happens to be a duplicate, say I get another rope bridge, then I simply stack it on top of it and I draw again. There must be 8 distinct cards out here. Now, something else to be mindful of are these 2 stacks right here. This one says unique, and it's a random one from a stack of 4, and this one shows one of the types of cards. Every time somebody plays a card that matches 1 or both of those locations, then they are going to move their ship 1 or 2 places, depending on what they matched. And you are going to be earning victory points as well as gaining these wild tokens. You can cash these in as one of any of the resources, or you can keep it, and at the end of the game, it'll be worth 2 victory points. So I matched neither one. I didn't trigger anything. Not a great play, but that is my turn, and then my opponent would go. So my opponent might perhaps deploy this down here and gain 1 of each of these. 1 driftwood, 1 seaweed, and a mushroom. And then it comes back over to me. And perhaps on my turn, I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to gain 1 sea stone, and I'm going to gain a card, as it says there. So I'll draw a card, and add that card to my hand. It's a guild master. It's a unique critter, so that goes into my hand. You do have a hand limit of 8 cards, so be aware of that. it'll go back to my opponent, and they perhaps would play a card now. So I'll go ahead and find a card for them to play so you can see how these things trigger. And in fact, there's a card right here on the table that they could play. They could play this rope bridge. It costs 2 of anything, so it's 2 wild. And it is a common construction, a rope bridge, worth 1 victory point. It has a one-time ability. That's what this card type entails. So when they play this, they're going to either draw 5 cards or they gain 2 resources of any kind. So they'll go ahead and do that. They're going to play this. They'll pay 2 of anything for that. So they'll go ahead and pay the driftwood, which tends to be the easiest to get, and they would play this in their area. I'll just put it over here, and they're going to, instead of drawing 5 cards, they'll take the 2 resources, and they're going to take 1 sea stone and the seaweed here. So they will do that, and now we check that card. It is not unique, but it is this type, so they're going to move their ship over to the next spot there, and they're earning 2 victory points. Like I said, once they hit these or pass them, they'll earn 1 of these. Let's go ahead and replenish the board, and I will walk you through the different locations that you can send workers to. I will talk about the anchors, and I will talk about the season change up there. So the different locations, you've seen many of them already. These right here will get you resources. We have the ones down here that are random during the game. And then we've got this spot right here that any number of players can go to, and it says you can discard up to 3 cards, and you gain any 1 resource for each one you discarded. And then the lookout over here where you can discard any number of cards and then draw to your hand limit from the deck or from the bay. And once you're done, we will replenish the bay if you took any from there. Now, talking about the anchors, once you've got some locations in play, some constructions, I should say. So let's say I've built this right here. I may use an anchor, and I can only do this 3 times in the game. I can put an anchor on this card to deploy a critter that matches that card type for free. So in this case, it's that kind. It looks like a scroll in blue. And so that means I could play a character that has that scroll in blue, like this customs officer. I could play them to the table with the anchor there for free without the cost, and then I'll trigger anything it does, all right? And again, this would replenish here, but this is a duplicate, so we'll bring out a new one that is also a duplicate, and so on until we have 8 distinct cards out here. So that's what the anchors do. Again, you can only do that 3 times in the game, and you can make any construction let you play a matching type critter for free. Now, the final action, which I have not taken yet, and I would probably do next, is a season change. So instead of playing a card or sending out a worker, I prepare for the next season. In this case, I'm going into this first one right here, and so I recall all my workers. I get an extra one, as you see right here. And then I am going to, during that first season there, I'm going to re-trigger all the cards that have that type, the green plant type there. So I would re-trigger this card as well as any others I have that have that type in whatever order I want to. And when the final player gets ready for that season, meaning when my opponent here goes ahead and does that as well, then we are going to refresh these 2 stacks, removing the top one there and flipping over the next one, so that now you get a bonus ship movement when you play a common card and when you play one of these green type cards. So there's going to be a lot of those moving us up on here, getting us these tokens, and of course netting us victory points. So that's generally it. You continue doing that. I now have all my workers, so I'll take a few turns deploying some, playing some cards, getting ready then for the next season, which I'll recall all my workers again, get another one, draw 2 cards from the bay, and then at the end of that season, meaning when everybody has crossed into it, which will happen at different times, of course, the last player to do so will once again replenish and refresh those 2, and then the islands down here, 2 out of them will turn off in a 2-player game. That's all of them. So we will flip those face down, and then we go on, and for the final season change, you will re-trigger all the green abilities there, draw 2 cards from the deck or the bay here, and then we once again will switch these 2. We continue going. Once you have no more actions after you've already prepared for that season, then you're done. Once your opponent is done as well, then we will count victory points. You'll be getting victory points for the cards you've played out. You'll be getting victory points for where your ship ended up. You'll be getting any victory points that you gathered in-game, which are these shells here. Some cards will give you these in-game. And you will also get victory points from this. The final worker placement location is the dunes. When you go to the dunes, you must qualify for one of these, meaning have that many kinds of cards. Say 3 cards, for example, that have this bag. And if you do so, then you can earn this tile. You can only have one of each kind. So once I've taken this one, I cannot take any of those again. And at the end of the game, let's say I've gathered up a few of these, then I am going to get some victory points for that as well. So let's say I've gathered these tiles here. I'm going to multiply the value of the shell times how many of these I've gathered. So in this case, 2 plus 0 plus 1 is 3 times 3 for 9 victory points from that. That's the game, and that's how you play. All right, there we go. So that's the overview for the game, and if you are someone who has played Everdell, I'm going to assume that your very first takeaway is going to be, as it was for me, boy, this is really like Everdell. Mm-hmm. It's a very similar game in many ways. Definitely at the surface level, it's very much like Everdell.
Yeah.
I'm probably not as invested in Everdell as everyone else. I played it once, maybe twice, and I was just fine with it. So I enjoyed it, but I didn't play it enough to really have a big grasp. But you guys have played it a lot, right?
I've played a decent amount of Everdell. Yeah, I like it quite a bit. Played a bunch of expansions and all that. But this is very similar to the core box. In fact, on the back of the rule book here is a list of, here are the things that are different from Everdell. So if you know Everdell very well, you could just read this and play this game.
Right.
That's nice.
Ish, you know what I mean? So on the one hand, yes, that's nice. This is basically like a very much a lateral move. On the other hand, not nice. This is basically Everdell again. And I can see the argument being made both ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the it does feel like they went back to the drawing board and cleaned up and streamlined some things that in Everdell are not as clean or streamlined. And I appreciate that. But a lot of it is the same. So we're going to have to, at some point then, near the end of this review, probably discuss if this is worth getting if you own Everdell. You know, who's this for? As far as the game itself, the things you're doing in it, I really like what's happening in this game. And you know what? I like the changes from Everdell. I think it's there's a few things that are streamlined and cleaned up that I really enjoy. I love the anchor upgrade sequence thing, whereas in Everdell, if you have a building, you need to find the exact character that goes to that building. You might not see them, like, ever in the deck. It might not show up. And I like that in this one, anything can tie to any building. Any one critter can tie to any building. That was probably my favorite new rule, actually.
Yeah, I think it simultaneously streamlines it and opens it up. You know, and so it gives you a little more flexibility, but as well as streamlines what you're actually doing and looking for, allowing you to kind of customize it a little bit more, which I appreciated.
I also like that the resources in this game are a little more loose. It's not as tight. Like the economy in the game opens up a little bit. It's a little looser. It's partly because of the ship moving around the board. Gives you those wild tokens. So if you're in a jam and you really need to play, one more card, but you're one resource short, you can cash that in.
Yeah.
You're giving up some victory points, but you get to put some things out.
Well, I appreciate that you have that flexibility again as well. It's victory points immediately, so you can just go up that, look at it as a track that you go up for victory points, or as these resources, and so you kind of have to weigh that. Is it worth giving up 2 victory points? Oh, but I get 3. Yes, it is. So you can kind of balance that out based on what your tableau is looking like.
And there are a lot of small decisions in there like that, which I do enjoy, like the whole fact you move up the track, and then you get that, I guess, the treasure chest or whatever, that you can save for points at the end, or use for resources, and you're like, well, I need to balance out the fact if I use them for these resources, I can get this card, who at end of a game are going to give me like 8 resources, so that's why I spend 2. There's a lot of really nice give and take that I do enjoy with that.
That's what she just said.
Yeah, but I don't know if that was in the base or not, in the base Everdell or the expansions at all.
No, the ship track thing is definitely a new idea, and it works well. I do like that. And a lot of cards, because it's a new concept, then that's new design space on the cards. Like some of the cards just say, move up on the ship track, 2, move up 1, whatever. I do feel like the abilities are a little more streamlined also. There's not It doesn't feel like there's as many weird abilities. They sort of picked the best ones and then created a few new ones. Many of the cards are like in the original Everdell.
One thing, if I can real quick, that I liked as well, you talked about how the resources are a little more forgiving in this. They're a little more accessible. I really like that in the third season, how you lose 2 of those spots. Or I'm not serious, depending on player count. No, it's always 2, but 2 out of, depending on what ratio is down there, it's still 2. So you lose 2 of those spots, which means you're kind of incentivized a little bit early game to start, again, building up those tableaus and those worker placement in your own tableau, knowing that's coming. And so, yes, it's looser in the beginning of resources and where you can go and different ways to get it and the wild tokens and things like that. But end game, you also need to be prepared for losing those spots in order to be able to maintain that accessibility to some of the resources. So I really liked that as well, that at some point those 2 turn off.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to know is coming and it's right there on the board. It's not a surprise, but also prep for and prepare for so that you're not done 4 rounds before everybody else or 4 turns before everybody else because you have no more spots to go to.
I really like also the windrose tiles. That they give you direction in the game. If you are, it's the kind of game, Everdell and Farshore here, both have that feeling of I have a handful of cards, there's 8 more on the table. I don't know what to pick next. I don't know. Well, now you have a couple of tiles that say, try playing critters. Try playing critters that have the green symbol. Cool. That eliminates, 80% of what I'm looking at, and I can just go, I can play this cute little toad guy. He's a critter and he's green. Get the resources I need for that. Play him, and I move my ship up too. Because the game is rewarding me for playing critters and playing green cards. And that will change for each season. I really like that. It gives you focus. If you need that, like, hey, try this. You don't know what to do? Try to do that. It gives you free points. I think that's a good idea. I like that, and that's also a very new thing.
I think it also brings a good angst to the game, because I know in a couple of plays of this, I was changing seasons earlier than an opponent, for example, and I wanted them to clear out a spot so I could get that final resource to play a card. They wouldn't come out of that spot, where I could get that last Riverstone or whatever it's called in order to play it. Or I was ready to play a card, and I needed them to switch seasons, and they wouldn't switch seasons because I wanted to see if I'm going to get a reward for it, because I currently have no reward on that Windrose system. And so it adds a good angst to it, I think, where you're like, you want to play it. Even when you're ready for it immediately, maybe you'll hold on to it a little bit longer to kind of push and hope it comes up and get that additional benefit. So I did like that kind of tension in your decision that it brought, that timing element to it that I didn't necessarily feel in Everdell.
So as far as things we don't like, I'll go first. I don't really like the seagrass resource. They made it like it's a rubbery little thing.
Yeah,
it feels kind of
sense.
interesting, but it is very flat, very
hard to grab.
It's hard. Like it's very hard to grab one actually off of the stack. It doesn't feel good. It's too flat, and I don't like that token as much. And I also was very surprised that they made the mushrooms something that can roll away.
Yep.
Again, you guys already did this with the original Everdell, and then they changed the production to make the little logs, the wooden resource, not roll.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that the mushroom goes in a circle if you leave it alone, but still, they kind of roll. So I'm surprised they didn't mess with the shape to keep it sort of,
Especially when it could have just been a mushroom cap or something, Like, I feel like there's ways they could have made it. Yeah, both of those 2 components did bother me as well. I mean, didn't ruin the game, obviously, but it's like, really? Like that's what you went with?
Seagrass one is a weird call.
That didn't make any sense. Yeah.
It's just they're small and finicky. So
And they stick together, and it's hard to grab.
Yeah.
That was my big one. I don't know how you guys feel about the artwork. It is a change from the artist. Andrew Bosley was the original artist. It is a new artist here. I like the art. I think it's
do too.
fantastic, so I don't have a problem with it.
I think it's absolutely lovely. I think it really is. Whereas we keep comparing this to Everdell and how it's like this sidestep, I feel like the artwork is a sidestep as well. It's not better, it's not worse. It looks like it does fit, but it's also distinct at the same time.
Right.
You know? So I did like that. One, as you were talking about the components, one thing I didn't like was the ships. I love the track, I like what it's doing, but the actual ships, if you're playing 3-4 players, and you're on the same number, then you have them in a line and it just, or someone bumps the table and, oh, was I on 14 or was I on 15? I just feel like the ships were a little oversized. I get they need to fit the meeple, but I just wish that that was done a little bit better. I think that actual track is in the way and cumbersome in more than a 2-player game.
Yeah, I mean, the ships didn't bother me as much, but I see what you're talking about them stacking. The one thing, I like the components, I like the production. The one thing is the $75 price tag for it. That's why I'm like, is it? I don't know if it's worth that. That's the problem.
And we should talk about that. Let's go ahead and jump into the price, into if you have Everdell.
Right.
Do you get this? I have a pretty clear answer. If you don't have Everdell and you're getting into one of these 2 games right now, I probably recommend this one, actually.
Yeah, and
I would say if you don't have Everdell, you don't have Everdell Farshore here, you don't have any of it, and you're like, I want to try one of these, I want to get one. I do think this is a more streamlined, cleaner, more welcoming, maybe even better balanced game.
and
It's just expensive for what you get, especially. That's incredibly expensive.
that's where I was too, because Everdell, like I said, we played a couple times, but as we talked about it, we're like, hey, it's nice, maybe we'll play it again, and we get it, and we blink, and there's 30 expansions.
Yeah.
And we feel too far behind to even jump into the Everdell pool right now, because everyone's so far ahead of us. So if we were going to do it, this would be the place to jump.
I think even as someone who has Everdell, this would probably get to the table more because of that accessibility, because it is more streamlined, because it is a base game. You know what I mean? And that's what you're getting. And I get you can just pull out your base game, Everdell as well. But if you have the collector's one or a couple expansions mixed in with a custom insert, at that point you're still getting out everything and filtering through it. This is to the table immediately.
Right.
You know,
Right.
So I do think that it has a place in that. If I'm introducing to new people, this is where I'm going to start.
Yes,
if
I
I'm
agree with
traveling and want to take, fill up my game bag to go to a con or something, this is the one that's going to go. So I do think it has that place in a collection beside Everdell. But at a $75 price point, I mean, I feel like that's a decision you have to make, and I
Right.
as well as get space on your gaming shelves and that kind of stuff. It puts you in kind of a cramp to know.
Yeah, I would actually go again. I already said if you have neither, get this. It would be my recommendation. If you have Everdell, unless you adore the world of Everdell, if it's a casual game for you, I would not recommend this. It's too similar. If you are someone who has a 25 game collection and you have Everdell, you don't need this. This is 84% Everdell DNA. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just they're too close. So I think it's great. I see those merits of it being cleaner and streamlined and all of that, but I almost worry that someone's going to feel duped buying this, getting it home, again, no research, and playing and being like, oh, it's kind of like Everdell again. I was expecting a different game in this world. I am a little surprised that so much of it is the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Having said that, I really do like it. So let's go ahead and do some final thoughts here and give it a score. What do you got?
All right. Well, I enjoy it a lot. Like I said, Everdell wasn't fully into it, but this, I really enjoyed the play. It's smooth. I'm coming at 8.5, 8.5, and I could see it going higher, but the price tag is what's keeping it down there, because I think 75 is a lot. It's a lot for the game, what you get. I don't think it's worth that. But as far as gameplay, just straight gameplay, I do enjoy it.
I agree.
I'm coming in at an 8 on this one. I really tried hard in coming on that score to separate Everdell out of it. And to make sure that I'm giving this game a fair look at what do I think of this game. And as I did that, I was like, I came in right where I would at Everdell, at an 8.0 right now. I enjoy what it's doing. I enjoy the crafty card play where, you're looking at the powers and trying to combo things together and setting your own path to get resources in order to power your own tableau. And again, I love the structure of how much can you get done before you switch seasons. Really trying to maximize each season here as well, but then take advantage of certain spots being open.
Right.
So I really enjoy the gameplay of it and kind of that intertwining nature of the cards. But ultimately, I come down right where I would on Everdell because they are so big. I mean, you said 84%. I'm like, I feel like 90, 93% even. I mean, they feel
93,
so
93.
93%, 0.5.
Yeah. 93.5%.
0.5%.
I also tried to remove Everdell from the equation, not in my discussion, obviously, but now when I'm giving the game a score, what do I think of this game? I really, really like it. I'm coming in at a 9. I don't know what I rate Everdell. Might be around there, between an 8 and a 9. I don't know. But I really like this one. I think it's great. I think it's captivating. It gives me direction at the beginning of the game. It gives me nice, fun return on investment as I'm playing the game. Those nice moments of, I get to move my ship this much, and I get this, and that gives me this, and I move the ship again. Look at that. And so I'm always getting stuff. It feels good to play this game. It can be crunchy. There are some interactions of cards that are very thinky. There are plenty of things to do. This is a game I think is going to have a lot of that replayability. Every time you try it out, you grab new characters that you put out. You have characters that you can put a worker right on that card. It does something, and there's going to be legs to this one. I'm kind of hoping that they don't make expansions to it.
I'm with you on that.
hoping you don't put out
Absolutely.
expansions.
Yes.
It's great.
Yep.
You should leave it alone so that it can be an entry game into the world of Everdell.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Then if somebody wants to get Everdell, they can do that and get the 5 or 6 expansions that are out.
Yeah.
But yeah, leave it as it is. I think it's a wonderful game. So there you go. 9 for me. That's a seal of excellence, folks, for Everdell Farshore here. That's going to do it. My name is Z Garcia.
I'm Joey Evans.
I'm Camilla.
Watch out for the pirates.